Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session, Bolstering Family Involvement with Tools and Techniques to Advance Learners with Significant Disabilities. After the pandemic, it has really come upon us as educators that how do we make sure families are in the loop? Because during the tough times that we experienced, it was very difficult to make sure that students were making progress just through virtual learning. So I thought this is something in order to empower families and get them actively involved, we do need to have a system in place. Many of you may have some of this, what I'm sharing with you today, already in place, but I am going to discuss it at length so that we make sure families are an active role in their learners who have learning challenges. So with that introduction, let me go ahead and begin. So what are we going to be talking about today? It is critical the parents are involved because that is an important predictor. Parent engagement is an important predictor for a child's success. So there should be a strong connection between the school system, all the educators who are serving the child, especially in the case of a child with significant learning needs. You will have a speech therapist involved, maybe an occupational and physical therapist, an assistive technology specialist, working as a team with the teacher and also the para-educator. So if everyone can work together and we can work on coaching families on what are some important things that they need to be doing in order to make sure there is sustained progress. We want to make sure the student is making not only academic progress and behavior progress, but also working on these functional life skills at home so that they can become independent as much as possible. Because one of the goals is that we promote self-dependence of these learners. And it is not enough if just educators work with the student in the school setting. Especially for those with learning challenges, we need for them to have lots and lots of practice, multiple times in different settings, so that it becomes second nature to them. And that's what advances their progress. So I'm going to share with you ideas on how do you coach families, maybe through face-to-face meeting, maybe through monthly webinars or monthly workshops that are in person, or you may have kind of a groups meeting together, or you may have like a learning fair where you are demonstrating certain activities and parents are joining that activity and they make some tools to take home with them. And in addition to that, as the abstract mentioned, how do we put together a toolkit for families to continue the work that you work so hard in teaching the student? So let's see who has joined us. I don't see a poll. Do you want to launch the poll?
Sure, I can launch it for you.
I don't see the poll. So are you serving in what capacity? Are you an administrator, a general education teacher, a special education teacher, speech pathologist, other support staff, or you're a parent? Please let me know. I'm eager to. Is it launched?
I have launched it. We have 78% in. 50% of our attendees today are speech pathologists.
Okay.
41% are other support staff.
Okay.
And that looks like the bulk of it. There's a couple of special education teachers with us today, a couple of administrators, and a few parents.
Okay. The next poll also, you may have to launch it. I don't see it.
Okay, sorry about that.
So you may wonder what kind of experience and background, educational background and expertise do I bring to this topic? I am an author of a number of books that you can see on this slide. And my two or three areas of specialty is students with significant disabilities, students with autism spectrum disorders, and also early childhood. As a matter of fact, I've also done a lot of work in the area of training paraeducators. And these are some of the books that I have written. And some of them are actually second or third editions of the same book. And for this webinar, I'm bringing in material from the autism book and the severe and multiple disabilities book, and several mini guides like mindfulness and behavior guide. I have included that material for this session. So when we think of school-home partnership, as I mentioned, it is extremely important to have a robust partnership in order to achieve, desirable student outcome. There should be a collaborative partnership within the school, within the program, so that various staff who are involved in working with that student is working collaboratively to assist families. And the other important thing is it is important to influence parent perception and expectations for the child. Why am I saying that? In 2021, I did a third edition of a book, the severe and multiple disabilities. One of the things that I found, I did a lot of interviews of administrators, teachers, speech pathologists, and all that. And one of the concerns many of them expressed is that when a parent has a child who has severe and multiple disabilities, or who has motor disabilities, or severe communication difficulties, then it colors the expectations the parents have for the child, and they just want the person to be happy, healthy, and they are not too focused on reaching for those academic advancement or behavioral advancement or self-dependence. So it is important to help the families to have higher and higher expectations, of course, depending on the developmental level and depending on what kind of activities we can use to nurture that capacity. But for this, parents need a lot of guidance in order to work with the child. Parents may not know how to tap into the strengths of the child. And it is important to be very sensitive and respectful towards the family's lifestyle. How much do they want to get involved? And it has to be gradually convincing them of the role that they can play and how much that difference it will make. And then certain cultural traditions may also impact how they look upon the whole thing. So for that, we need regular communication with parents. It may be a daily or a weekly communication between school and home, a detailed checklist, not just a couple of sentences that say, he had a good day, no, he had an awful day, or he had a lot of problems, or he didn't eat at all. Instead of just one or two sentences, if we can have a checklist that kind of addresses a variety of things the student is doing in the classroom, in the school setting, in the cafeteria, that would help families to understand what is expected, what are some things the child is involved in. And I have a sample set of checklist that the parents can complete at the end of this uh, webinar slides. So are you sharing an activity kit? Are there regular meetings? Do you have virtual meetings? These are all things that you can consider as you are establishing that school-home partnership. And when we are thinking in terms of the learner's success, I visualize it as a 7 R's. There are certain roles that the educator, when I think about educator, I'm talking about the educator team working together. The team's role, the parent's role, and the student's role. All of them have to play a role in order for the student's success. And then it is important to establish that relationship between the teacher and student, or the educator team and the student, the educator team and the parent, and the educator team, and connecting the student, parent, and the team together. And it's also important that the parents realize that they have to have that kind of a strong relationship with their own child. And then each one of the identified team members, as well as the parent and the child, has a certain responsibility in order for the student to make progress. It is important to emphasize, either through a coaching session, through a virtual session, or if you create a coaching booklet, about the importance that the student has a routine. Just like in the classroom, in the school, they have a schedule. It is important that the parent follows a routine so that every day, maybe 3 or 4 times, maybe short segments of 5 to 10 minutes, they work on some of the things that they have learned, the student has learned in the school, and that's where the activity kit or the coaching booklet comes in. And this rehearsal, the practice, is critical for, especially for the students that we are thinking of who have significant learning needs. And parents have to be taught what is a prompted response and what is a completely physically prompted response versus gradually fading that prompting support and expecting the child to do at least part of the activity himself or herself. And then parents also have to learn reinforcement, even if it is an attempt that the child is making compared to previously not even touching, not even responding, not even pointing. That reinforcement, oh, you tried. Oh, you did try. Awesome. That kind of positivity. And then the resources that you put together and the resources that the parents share with you through either the checklist or through the ongoing communication. So all of that is part of the 7 R's. So begin with the end in mind. What are you going to achieve? We are going to enable that student have life outcomes that's sustainable through what you are doing, the extraordinary work that you are doing. Unless it is continued at home, we are not going to see that end goal achieved. So I broke it down into 3 kind of segments where the coaching can take place. Student with significant needs, students with severe autism spectrum disorders, or students with severe and multiple disabilities, they may present diverse and complex learning needs. And as I said, they need repeated practice for skill acquisition. So we can think in terms of the academic and the cognitive skills. So what are some things that the parents can continue to do, the families can continue to do at home, is to promote communication. And you can play a critical role in sharing that importance of that communication. Enabling the child to express her needs and wants. Enabling the child to make choices whenever possible. And then constantly encourage vocabulary of the student. Instead of speaking for the student, is there a way the student can use a variety of means to communicate, to grow, and to learn, either expressively, receptively, pointing in a variety of means, communicate and increase his or her vocabulary. And then gradually increase understanding and comprehension. There are a variety of examples of math activities that parents can be taught to do with their child, and I'm going to share that in a later examples. Numbers, measurement, and variety of things, money skills. And just as important as the academic and the cognitive skill is the social, emotional, and the behavioral skills. Again, families need guidance on this, coaching on this. In order to make any kind of growth or progress in academic and cognitive skills or in functional life skills, the student needs fostering of executive function skills, to be able to pay attention, to control impulsive behaviors, and to be able to switch from one task to the other and have cognitive flexibility, to be able to identify at least some basic, simple emotions, like and dislike, happy and sad, scared, surprised. And then it is also possible to teach, especially those who get easily frightened, easily scared, easily engages in kind of tantrums, to practice self-calming and breathing and mindfulness. And then we also want to increase the child's social interaction. Similarly, just as I mentioned, similar to the academic skills, the student also needs, extremely important, that the parents promote the functional life skills. And the home provides a great opportunity to practice many of these skills. And I will go into greater detail in later slides, but reaching and grasping object, and maybe making some accommodations that you can show if the student is not able to reach and grasp, what are some alternatives? Instead of the parent completely doing the task, how do they identify, how do they locate personal items, clothing or food, or making any kind of selection? How do they follow a 2-step sequence independently without depending on the adult doing it for them? Increase knowledge of hygiene, body awareness, all of that we can coach the family. So we have another poll here. What are some support tools that you are already using to assist families to work with their child at home? Weekly checklist. This is a poll. Do you want to launch the poll? Okay, you have. What are some support tools that you use? Weekly checklist, regular, virtual, in-person. Okay. Still forming.
Are you able to see the poll now?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
It's still people are filling in the information. Okay. Looks like it's almost equal, except for share on activity learning kit. That's 31%. But a lot of the people use virtual in-person meeting to coach families. That's an excellent way to connect with families. And I'll go into a little bit more detail as I share the rest of the slides. And many of you send daily note to parents, and some of you send weekly checklist. And one of the ways maybe you might want to modify is, instead of, maybe parents expect daily note, but most of the daily notes that I have seen when as a consultant going to different school districts is usually it's only 1 or 2 sentences, because you really don't have the time to write a detailed note for every parent. So if you have a detailed checklist that addresses all the different areas like academic skills, maths, under academic, maybe cognitive, communication, language, math, and then behavior skills, and then personal life skills, and all of that in a detailed checklist, along with a checklist for parents to send back to you. That may be one idea. But anyway, many of you are actively involved. That's wonderful. Thank you for completing the poll. And so let's look at how we can use those 7 R's: routines, rehearsal, reinforcement, and resources in order to coach families. Building attention, vocabulary, and comprehension. Storytelling is a good way, and it doesn't have to be anything complex. It can be something simple, 3 or 4 sentences about an experience that the family had. Maybe they went to the park, and they can build a story about it. They went to the zoo, they went on a trip. Just a short story, and getting the child to recall 1 or 2 things. If the child is not using verbal language, maybe they can point to something. Maybe they can show a picture. And then it is important for us as educators to make sure families are not doing all the talking. The parents are not doing all but they are giving the child a turn. Parent may begin the story, and the child has an opportunity to interact and respond. This is something we do need to emphasize to families. And in order to gain language and improve vocabulary and comprehension, children need lots and lots of opportunities for them to communicate. So, and also the other thing we need to emphasize is, it is not something they have to sit at home for 10-minute session like a teacher and a student, but they can do it anywhere, anytime. While they're riding in the car, can they point to the red car and the blue cars and count them? Or when they are at the grocery store, what can we do? Or when they are relaxing at home, what can they do? So or when they're eating lunch or dinner, what can they do? These are all different ways we can encourage. And the other things, let's say you are sitting at a doctor's office, you're waiting. And then it can be something as simple as, what are all the things we see? If the child is not verbal, again, verbally communicating, you can say, can you point to this? Can you point to, or I see something, and you can play the game of I spy. But when you're sitting down for lunch or dinner, can the child think for just a couple of minutes all the food words? Or when you're sitting at a restaurant, can they think of all the food words while you're waiting for the meal to arrive? Just takes a couple of minutes. And all you need is a little piece of paper and pencil, and you can even draw the picture just to grab the child's attention. And when they are dressing, can you have the child name all the different clothes that they're going to wear to get ready for school? So these are all ways. Brainstorming is a useful technique we can teach families to use on an ongoing basis. As they are riding to the grocery store, what are all the things we are going to be buying? That will be food. Similarly, using rehearsal and multiple opportunities during the routine, we can build on the child's math skills, counting, adding, subtracting. While walking, they can count the trees. They can pick some couple of flowers and say, this is a flower. And so science concept, and you are building that vocabulary. This is a leaf, this is a flower, this is a tree. Then you can talk about life cycle. But we do need to teach them while riding in the car, as I said. They can count the cars, red cars or white cars. They can talk about money at the grocery store. These, this item costs this much. The other, which one is more? This is $5. This is $4. Which one is more? It can be as simple as which is more. Is 4 more or 5 is more? And they can use opportunity to measure things. They can use a ruler and measure a book, measure a plate, and they can tell time. But we do need to point out different opportunities during the daily, time at home, in the evening, how families can use this time to do all these things. You may want to consider putting together a coaching booklet and math activities, more math activities, like they are walking to the store. So they they get down from the car and then they count the steps to the store. That could be just fun. And if the student is using a wheelchair, and the parents can say, okay, we are going to count 5 people who are walking to the store too. And they can see if they can count 5 people, and make it kind of a guessing game as they are counting the steps. How many steps do you think we are going to count? How many steps will it be before we reach the store? Are they going to be 10? Are they going to be 20? So that will also kind of a little prediction. It will bring some joy and kind of fun. And as they are setting, help, get the parent, that they have to help the child to at least, if they cannot carry the plate, they can at least maybe put the silverware on the table. They can count them and they can figure out, do we have more spoons or do we have more knives? Which one do we have? Do we have more plates or more cups? And the same thing with at the grocery store. If the child is a slightly higher functioning, then they can challenge them, say, okay, 4 apples for $4 or 10 apples for $8. Which would be a good buy? Which is a better buy? So that will be a little bit of a challenge. But, there are children who are capable, and we do need to encourage parents to challenge their children too in a positive manner. And children can learn to make predictions. Children can build patterns. They can, for example, riding in the car. You can say 2, 4, or while waiting in the doctor's office, 2, 4, 6, 8, what comes next? So these kind of activities unless we kind of guide and coach families, parents may not automatically think of them. And you can also share a variety of games that the parents can play. It may be something as simple as rolling the dice and then counting the number on each die. It could be vocabulary game, like a pizza topping. What topping can we have? And parent and child can take turns. They will name one item that will go on the pizza. They can play memory games. They can play pretend game, like making feeling faces. Or they can pretend to be a clown. They can pretend to be a bear, different kinds of things, so that it builds their imagination. They can toss bean bags or some small items on a hula hoop, and they can toss it inside, and that could be fun. At the same time, combine it with math. And we already talked about story building activities and physical movement activities. If the child is using a wheelchair to move around, maybe they can use their arms and clap and move and raise their arm in different ways. Those of you who have joined, who are physical therapists or occupational therapists, can give guidance to the team on what are some activities that a particular student is able to do and plan the activity accordingly. And as I said, one of the simplest games that many of these things do not require any special tools. They can play while waiting at the doctor's office, which is often, I spy, what do I see? I spy a chair. How many chairs do we spy in this? I spy a book. How many books do we see? And then fostering self-dependence. What are some things during the daily routine that parents can encourage their child to do? Eating a meal. What way can the child help in making a snack? Maybe if you're baking cookies, you can share with the parent that the child can maybe measure a cup of flour or measure half a cup of nuts. Whatever it is, they can play a little role in helping. Previously, we talked about helping with setting the table. Now, in preparing a meal, also they can. And the other things is sorting out the laundry, sorting out all the shoulds, sorting out the towels. How many towels? Math opportunity, but at the same time, building vocabulary. They may be able to identify the item. They may be able to point to the item. They may, if you show them whether 3 shirts or 4 shirts, parents can just say 3 or 4 and point to numbers. And the same way, they can help at the grocery store. They can order. How are they going to help at the grocery store? Maybe they can help with the parent gives something in the child's hand, the child may place it in the basket. The child may point to which one is the apple? And the child may be able to point to the apple. If there are apples and peaches and oranges, the child may be able to point to the apple. So that is identification. Cooperating at the doctor's office. But the child has to be given daily chores that he must do or she must do around the house to assist. Maybe something very simple. Every day they do. They put the laundry in the laundry basket, or they may drop the laundry in the washing machine. They may help to set the table. And it is important. Parents must know that they have to give certain choices, and that the child is making the choice herself independently without the parent making the choice for the child. Choice making is an extremely important, very pre-cognitive skill, making a choice. And that we need to encourage the family to enable the child to indicate the choice. And it is important that they focus on strengths and nurture them and provide positive strokes when the child is attempting the task, and certainly when the child is completing the task. And rehearsing and reinforcing edible from non-edible items, nurturing functional communication, picking up and eating finger food, requesting for more. These are all different ways the child can rehearse and parents can reinforce and encourage self-dependence. And in terms of social emotional, beginning with something as simple as identifying feelings like happy and sad and scared and surprised, as I mentioned before, understanding feelings and thoughts of others, and gradually gaining self-control and problem solving and role play and all that. And for that, parents can play games. Parents can teach self-calming, like simple yoga exercises, simple mindfulness, just breathing and counting the breathing. Those would help. And it can be something very, very simple as taking deep breaths and 5 times deep breathing and then calm down. And some simple yoga exercises, it can be even done in a wheelchair, can be taught to the parents. And then music as a way to relax and to bring joy into the daily routine we can share with the family. And social skills also, there are many social skills stories, and we can teach parents on that. And it is important to emphasize to the parent that they have to be consistent, they have to be calm, and constructive in coaching the child. It is important also for parents to plan ahead. Watch out for triggering events. It's extremely important to plan ahead so that you know which events triggers certain tantrums, certain difficult, challenging behaviors. It is important for parents to know that they should try and avoid escalation. If every time you are going to the doctor's office, it's going to trigger a kind of a challenging behavior, it is important for parents to plan ahead. Just like getting ready for school or getting on the bus, they have to have a system in place to avoid escalation so that it is not repeated again and again. Once you know which ones, so they prepare the child, especially those with autism spectrum disorders, they do have a kind of a fear and anxiety. Even if they have gone through that routine, it is important to prepare every day with the same technique. And so that is critical, and we need to enable and empower the family so that they build that tolerance in the child, using visuals, teaching calming breaths, using mindfulness exercise. Parents will prepare the child for that transition from the previous activity that the child was engaged in. So this is going to be very helpful to the family to avoid all the related tantrums that may come due to change or due to discomfort with certain activities. And so, as I mentioned, plan ahead and be proactive is something you want to teach families, just as you practice in the classroom, in the school setting, in the transition from the classroom to the cafeteria or from the classroom to the playground, the same type of techniques that you used that is successful with you, you want to share for the parent when they are making those transitions. Preventing crisis is extremely important, and it is also important for parents to know that they should not be getting into a power struggle every day, every time there is a change in task. Minimize talking to the child at that time, and do not discuss the meltdown behaviors or get into an argument or react angrily to the child, but be calm, very, very calm and constructive. It is important for them to recognize that it is easier and better to navigate out of the situation rather than escalate the situation by getting upset. Now we move on to the items in the activity toolkit that you can put together, or you can have like every quarter, every 3 months, every 2 months, you can have a family event. Bring the families, and they can make 1 or 2 tools that you show them a model of and they take back with them. Or if it is easier for you, you can just assemble a kit at the beginning of the year and then bring the parents and have a demonstration session of how you use the different tools, and you can share them. Especially the pandemic has shown us it is not just the school team that can enable the child. The parents have to work together with you in order to enable the child to reach that goal and success. So you can share some books and book suggestion. One of the things, for example, is this is an adapted book. It's called My Hygiene Book. And you can have them and you can attach objects, and there is just a simple text. And this one says, scrub, scrub, my body is clean. And you can attach an object that is associated with body wash, like a cloth or something like that, like a face cloth or something like that. And there are different pages, and it is a thick, heavy book. And they can make the book, or you can make the book and you can share with them. And another example that I have is a number book. It's my book of numbers. And this one has numbers and a little kind of a felt item that's Velcroed, and they can take it off, and parents can practice numbers with the child. Variety of communication devices, but limit the number of communication devices and use 1 or 2 to explain, because they're not going to be able to use all of that. They do not have the necessary expertise. So you may want to begin with 1 item, 1 or 2 items. Some vocabulary tools. And you can also find adapted books through the Tar Heel readers, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. Some response tools. If the student is at the stage where they are just responding using yes or no, that is, some little craft stick with something attached that says no here, and this one says yes. So you can make those kind of, initially they begin with those response tools and then gradually add to some tools where it may be alphabet cards, it may be words, vocabulary words. The reason for them being in the craft stick, even if the student is not able to grasp, you can just push it in like this. And that we have to demonstrate that to the parent, instead of the parent always doing the task. And one of the other things you may want to add is some puppets, which is just fun and joyful. You may want to add a social narrative as part of the activity tools. You may want to add some response tools. Oh, I'm feeling happy. I'm feeling sad. the words. And so you're slowly building vocabulary of happy and sad feeling words. Or you can give depending on the level of functioning of the student, maybe something more complex like a set of feeling words. And you may want to, if the student is functioning at a higher level and beginning to understand story concepts, you may want to use some kind of a tool where you may want to add things like this, which is identifying the character in a story. And if you're going to send some books to the parent, then maybe they can work on it. This is again an additional item. You may decide that you want to begin small and not add all these items. But as this box shows, this activity kit can grow over a period of time. You may begin with just 4 or 5 items, and then gradually you may add number books, counting books, addition books, maybe games that you can play, a number of adapted books, and some kind of tools like this, cognitive tools. And one of the things that may help, which is a very simple thing, is a graduated number sequence card, so that they can practice, counting and then trying to match objects. And there may be some children who may tend to put things in their mouth. So if you're concerned, you can also put it inside a little plastic bag. And what this has is these kind of bells, so that it has sound. And especially if the child is visually impaired, they can feel it and they can also hear it. And so parents can make a set of these things from 1 to 5, and gradually increase it to 7 and 10, and then put it on there. And then one of the things you may want to share is something like this. And then the parents take this mini whiteboard with them and then work on the child to count. So these are all things, optional things that you can put in that activity kit. Maybe you can add some dice. You can add some, tools like this for a child who has a tendency to put things in there. They are matched to the numbers. And you can make a graduated number line. These are all to build their math skills at home or practice the math skills at home. And you can share a kind of a choice board. You can also use the same thing to teach the parents. They can use a whiteboard and help them make choices. Or just verbally, the parents can ask, what do you like? Do you like apple or do you like banana? And wait for the child to respond. That is extremely important, instead of the parent making the choice. Do you like to play with a dog or do you like to play with a tiger? Or do you like to see a tiger in the zoo or do you like to see a dog while walking? So expand the vocabulary. What do you like to do? Do you like to paint or do you like to glue pictures? These are all ways parents need to build that choice making and enabling the child to express preference, maybe just through pointing. And maybe you want to make a 2-column chart. And for a child who is beginning to make advances in reading, you can make a simple, use an index card and not use all of the letters of the alphabet. Maybe begin with just 4 or 5 letters and then have the child go find an item that begins with that letter. A, what else? There is an armchair. Can you point to that? There is an apple. Can you point to that? Maybe then gradually, after a little bit of practice, maybe when you mention, oh, I'm thinking of the letter A, maybe they can go and point to the armchair. So this is something that can happen at home This can also happen when they are waiting at the doctor's office. It could be a small index card with just a few letters of the alphabet, and the parents puts it in their purse and then takes it with them, and just to engage the child's attention and keep the child busy, focused on it. It's also a distraction technique, so that the child is not moaning and groaning, but playing the little game with you. Is something that you can share with the family. And some of the assistive technology tools, I'm not an expert on assistive technology, but I do find these are some simple tools that you may be able to share one at a time, maybe a couple, as the parents are using it, making sure that they are using and that it's not locked up in some cabinet. After you have had this interaction with the family that they are using, you can increase from 1 to 2 and explain to them how they can use and in what situations they can use, what settings they can use, what kind of activity they can use. They will need a lot of guidance. Step by step, I talk to communicator, and talking breath is something that you can even carry in a purse when you want the child to, let's say, take 5 calming breaths, and you can have that picture on one of those talking breaths. And there are some additional activities I added, because one of the things is the weather chart. We are always talking about the weather in the classroom, but quite often, many of the children are just repeating what somebody else is saying or the adult is saying. But if the child practices at home in the evening what the weather is like, in the morning as they are getting ready for school, that would help them transfer that information even when they are classroom and they are inside the classroom and they are looking at a weather chart. That connection they will make from what they have seen outside to what they see inside on a weather chart in the classroom. The other thing that you can create is maybe a sensory box with a variety of textures, and all you need is a tissue box, or you can send these kind of things as an activity. Instead of sending a note home, you can send kind of activity suggestions that parents can make. And then you can have a showcase where the parents bring the activities that they have made and they show off at a special session, a celebratory session. And then parents can go on a nature hunt and they can collect, and the child can make a kind of a collage as shown in this picture. And they can make a pinwheel, and a variety of things parents can do. I have added a lot more ideas. I'm not saying you should start doing all of them at the same time, but you can begin small and then gradually add. But I want to make sure we cover a variety of academic, cognitive areas, different types of exposure, and at the same time, different types of ways families can make sure the child is actively involved. You can send home adapted stamps for the child who has fine motor issues, a child who has difficulty grasping objects. You can help them make a sensory bag, and parents can make, as long as they include materials that are safe and the child will not put them in their mouth. We do need to provide that additional guidance and coaching to the families. And I mentioned about a checklist that you can share with the families for the families to complete. This is that checklist. It's included in your slides. Is the child making choices? Is the child initiating communication? Did the child listen to a story? Is the child practicing math at home? Counting dogs? What kind of activities were they involved in at home? Assisting with chores? refrain from engaging in behaviors, all of these, or played a game cooperatively. And so arrange these materials. We have to make sure that the parents make sure that it is within the reach of the child. Parents have to encourage the child, help the child to problem solve, and also to emphasize that when the child is attempting, draw attention to what the child is doing right, provide positive reinforcement, and most importantly, to make the whole learning joyful, fun, and want to be repeated, we have to provide children choices. And parents have to model for the child. They have to wait and provide waiting time for the child to respond. That's another thing we have to emphasize. And then once the child has responded, we can expand as a parent. Parents can expand on that response so that they are reinforcing through that expansion of that. Yes, I know you were trying to point to the chair. Yes, that is an armchair. You were right. That begins with the letter A. And then, of course, we have to provide parents with the visual supports and celebrate every aha moment. We have to do that in the classroom, and parents have to do that at home. We have to celebrate even minimal amount of progress so that that minimal amount of progress becomes maximum amount of progress. And so for that, we have to celebrate those aha moments. Here are a number of resources, including my books and Tar Heel readers. And then Okali Center has a number of excellent resources that you can use for children with autism, different types of techniques. It's an ocean of resources. And so is Sherlock Center on Disabilities. That also has very, it has free access to educational and entertaining audiobook content. And these are the books that I used for this presentation mainly. So with that, I want to thank AbleNet for providing me with this opportunity to present this kind of a different session on bolstering families, because they are a critical part of our student learning. You cannot do it alone. Educators cannot do it alone. And I thank each and every one of you for joining this webinar. Thank you. Have a great day. Have a great year ahead. All the best to you. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Okay, the first question is, I am a family member and want information on how I can get the school to communicate with us to help our child with severe physical and mental delays. First, you may want to reach out to the teacher. And if you have any connection or communication with the speech pathologist or the physical therapist, you may want to reach out to them. And you can do it through phone calls, you can send a letter. And if all of that does not work, then you may want to reach out to the administrator in the school and say, is there a way we can get some support so that I can work with my child at home, but I need some resources, I need some ideas, I need some suggestions for activities, and so that I can be an active member in the support team to make my child, more independent, gain more academic behavioral skills. I wish you success. I'm hoping, if you reach out to them, most likely they will respond to you. There is already another answer to that question. I would encourage you to reach out to the teacher and let them know you are interested in this so you can reinforce at home. We love when we can collaborate with our families. That's absolutely true. That's exactly what I said. Okay. There is another interesting question. Do you have any tips on how to get children more motivated in using assistive technologies such as an AAC device? One of the things that I have noticed when I have gone into the classrooms is sometimes a child is given a much more complex device, like a 64 icon, 32 icon, when the child is beginning to learn to make simple choices. So you may want to begin with something like I Talk to Communicator and with pictures associated with it, or even sometimes you may want to give, put a little something which has got a slightly three-dimensional texture or something like a felt shape or a felt picture. And then gradually from that, you may move to something which has got 8 icons or 4 icons. So one of the things is for them to get familiar with using a device and then gradually increase the challenge is one of the things I think would benefit. But I also think lots of practice and continued practice in different settings so that they are able to generalize it. What happens frequently is it is used in the classroom, but when they go into the cafeteria, they are not using it. So in all the different settings, we want the child to be using, it may be something very simple device in the beginning, but then gradually as they are gaining more clear idea how to use the device, then they need to be using it in a variety of settings so that that becomes part of their daily routine to communicate with others. I hope I have answered that question. If there is anything else, I will be happy. Okay, thank you very much. And again, thank you to AbleNet for this presentation.